With this trick, you'll make the most amazing bread in your home oven and save money since it doesn't require any expensive tools. To make the perfect bread, I want to introduce you to my inverted tray method. It's really a game changer for home bakers. But before going into detail, let's have a quick look at the role of steam when baking. Steaming is really essential because it creates a humid environment around the bread doughs you're baking. Now to explain how this works, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the book called The Sourdough Framework. You can read it for free at the-sourdough-framework.com. There's also a hardcover version available if you appreciate the content. It features amazing illustrations that show you exactly how to make the best bread at home. If you don't have enough steam, a crust forms directly on your loaf. And this means that your bread cannot expand properly vertically in the oven while it's baking. You want to delay that crust formation as much as possible. And to do so, you can use steam. And there are 3 ways how you can achieve that. First of all, the inverted tray method, which I'll show you in this video, a Dutch oven, or a steam injection oven. Personally, I always opt for the inverted tray method because it's cheap and everybody can do it. Dutch ovens are fairly expensive and start at $100 probably. And a proper steam injection oven is a whole different game. So this is my preferred option. And what you need is you need to have one inverted tray here on top, then your doughs below, and ideally a bowl with some hot boiling water at the bottom. I like to use some rocks inside, but it's definitely not required. And the way how this works is the following. You're loading your breads into the oven. The boiling water at the bottom creates steam all around your oven. At the same time, while your bread is baking, it also releases steam. And by having this inverted tray on top, you're shielding your doughs against the top heating element of your oven. So all the steam is going to start move upwards and then circle around your bread doughs, creating you a dough sauna. This means it's really nice and humid. The crust formation is delayed and your breads can start to grow vertically upwards. You can use a stone here in the middle, but you could also just use another tray with parchment paper. Seriously, I think it's a game changer and will guarantee you amazing bread in your oven. So let's now look at the full process. This assumes that your dough or bread rolls are ready to be baked. I don't want to go too much into detail on the full recipe, but I'm going to be linking a video right here where you can check out a tutorial how to make amazing bread at home. This works for sourdough and yeast-based loaves. And as far as I can tell, also for cheesecake. Place your water tray and place your stone or tray in your oven. Heat your oven to roughly 230 degrees Celsius or 440 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. Now take your doughs and score them. When scoring your dough, make sure to use a very sharp knife. A razor blade really works wonders. And then you want to score the top of your dough at a 45-degree angle. Please note that this changes depending on where you would like to score your dough. And this scoring allows the dough to rise through that small incision upwards. In the end, you'll be presented with a beautiful ear on top of your bread. This provides additional crisp texture to the fluffy crumb structure. To me, that's the perfect bread. Another cool trick to make scoring a lot easier is to rub your dough after shaping in some flour. So you're placing your dough in a banneton or a bowl, and before you do that, just take some of the flour you used for shaping and rub it gently everywhere on top of your dough. The surface becomes a lot drier and this is going to make scoring easier. Alternatively, you can also store your bread in the fridge overnight, this is called retarding, or place it in your freezer for 30 minutes. This is going to have a similar effect. So we just scored our dough and now we are ready to spritz it with some water. Is that, by the way, a word? If you don't have a water spritzer, what you can definitely also do is just gently rub some water on top of your dough or use your hand to massage the dough with a little bit of water. Now take that tray, that inverted tray, and place it in your oven above the space where you want to load your doughs. Make sure there is enough space, and I'm speaking from experience, that your breads can rise upwards. You don't want it to be placed too close to the actual bread doughs because else they'll just grow upwards against it and that's going to cause a big mess. It's important that this tray is not preheated. The next step is to load your doughs in the oven. Now the baking process starts. Make sure you have your boiling water at hand. I typically use my water cooker to do so. Place that boiling water inside of the tray at the bottom. This tray of course has to be preheated because we want a lot of steam to be created. It should ideally be something out of metal. Don't use a glass bowl, it's going to shatter. Now bake your dough for around 30 minutes. After 30 minutes you'll have no more oven spring. In theory, your bread is ready to be eaten like this. Pro trick, you can use a thermometer and measure the core temperature of your dough. Once it's at 92 degrees Celsius or roughly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, your bread is ready. You could take the dough like this, which would be called par baking, and send it to your friend, or you could store it in a freezer for later times. There's one problem though, this bread has not finished baking. We don't have the crust yet. So the first 30 minutes have just been about getting that vertical rise. And now the second half of the baking process is about getting that beautiful crust, because bread is always a play of textures. You want the crisp outside and the fluffy interior. This combination really creates the perfect bread. So now we need to build that crust, and to do so we remove the source of water, which would be the bottom tray with water, and we also remove the top inverted tray. This way the browning process of your crust starts. And now this can take 10 minutes or 20 minutes. This really depends on what you personally like. Everybody likes a different style of crisp crust. Personally, I really like it when you have different colors of the crust. Each color creates a unique flavor. If you're baking on a tray or baking on a stone, chances are that the bottom of your bread might not be fully brown yet. In that case, what you can simply do is you can take your loaf, flip it upside down to expose it more to the top heating element. Now this method is not gonna work if you have an oven which has a fan which is always turned on. These ovens are made to eject all the steam from the goods inside. So the crust will form very quickly and all the steam will evaporate from the oven. In this case, your only option is to use a Dutch oven. This is my go-to method because it also allows me to bake 2 loaves at the same time, compared to a Dutch oven where I can only bake 1 loaf at a time. So please give it a shot and let me know if you like this method. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful. So the following is a couple of extended information which I feel goes a little bit above the scope of the default YouTube video. So I hope this additional content is helpful to you. It just shows a couple of more options and interesting insights on baking in your home oven. One of the things I would like to show you is that you can also bake for 15 seconds without any steam, and then you can score your bread. What this does is, as previously mentioned, you want to have a drier surface, which makes scoring a lot easier. So just load your loaves into the oven, bake for 15 seconds, take them out, and then try to score one more time. This is going to make scoring a lot easier. I feel this is really a game changer, especially when doing things like making a baguette or so in your home oven. One of the issues I always struggled with was how to score properly, and I recommend that you practice scoring. Initially, after you kneaded your doughs, try to make a really smooth dough ball, and then take your razor blade or sharp knife and just score on this bread directly after you initially kneaded it. You won't damage the dough, and it's a really good opportunity for you to practice the scoring process. If you have, you can also just use a basic apple and try scoring on this apple. Give it a shot, it's gonna make scoring a lot easier for you. Now, one of the things that can happen is after you scored your dough and it's ready to be baked, that dough completely flattens out. Sometimes the dough is going to raise again in the oven, but chances are that you have actually run into over fermentation issues. So you fermented your sourdough bread for a too long period of time, and the gluten can't hold its strength anymore, and that's why it flattens out. Don't worry, the bread is gonna taste really, really nice, but you won't get that oven spring, which means you'll lack a little bit of texture on your final bread. Next time, try to ferment a little bit less or improve the activity of your sourdough starter. I've been talking a lot about stiff starters, and I really feel that a stiff starter could be a potential game changer for you because it boosts more the yeast activity compared to the bacterial activity. Another trick that I can recommend is that you just try to lower the temperature of your oven to around 200 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So try to bake at even a lower temperature, and also please try to use the thermometer to measure the actual temperature of your oven. I've had a couple of ovens showing 200 for instance, but in reality they were 230. A lower temperature can really be helpful to prevent that crust forming. Now this works great for doughs which don't have a too high hydration, because they naturally don't flatten out too much. If the hydration of your dough is a bit higher and your dough always flattens out a bit, you want to make sure that the temperature is not too low. You want a gel to form on the outside of your dough, and the lower the temperature, the slower this is going to be, and the bread can flatten out just a little bit more. For my default loaves, which have around 60 to 70% hydration, I'm always baking at 230 degrees Celsius, which is a bit more than 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Should you actually preheat your dough? No, you don't have to. When I'm baking a bread in a loaf pan, I never preheat my oven. I just place my loaf directly in there.
I place some of that boiling water directly on the unpreheated rocks. That water is going to start to boil and create a more steamy environment. I only do preheat when I'm baking freestanding loaves. If your dough is lower in hydration and doesn't automatically flatten out, if it has a bit more elasticity and stays together, then no preheating is required. If you're baking a bread in a loaf pan, I highly recommend that you use a thermometer in this case. It can really be hard to see if the bread is done baking. It might look good from the outside, but the inside is still underbaked. I notice this especially if I retard cold proof my doughs overnight in the fridge in a loaf pan. In that case, a thermometer is really a game changer. If you can turn off the fan in your oven, or you might have a gas oven where you can't place a tray of water at the bottom, then you should look into buying a Dutch oven. Now you can get a basic Dutch oven from Lodge, for instance. There's also the Challenger bread pan, and there are also countless of other Dutch ovens out there. Now, I couldn't really recommend one that is perfect. They're all made out of cast iron, so they work in a similar way. In the video you saw me using a glass bowl. I just used a basic IKEA glass bowl as a Dutch oven. I made sure the oven was not preheated. I loaded my loaf, and then because the temperature didn't change too much, the glass bowl didn't shatter. But this is really expert mode. I've had a couple of glass bowls shatter on me. There's also one Dutch oven which comes with a glass dome. It's called the Braun. I'm going to be linking that in the description as well. But seriously, the inverted tray method I think is so much better than any Dutch oven out there. You can bake multiple loaves at the same time. Plus you can also bake baguettes, you can bake buns, and so on. This is a much more versatile, much cheaper option. You could also make your own Dutch oven, do it yourself, just like I did with the glass bowl. Or I know if you're in the US, you have these large turkey roasting pans. Just use a couple of large turkey roasting pans to bake your breads inside. That's totally gonna work as well. The concept is the same. You have the water, which is evaporating, circling inside of your do-it-yourself Dutch oven. Should you load an ice cube into the Dutch oven? No, it's not really required. Some people do it, but in my own experience, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Just load your bread in the Dutch oven, spritz it with a little bit of water, and you should be good to go. Now, if you like the extended version, I'd appreciate a small donation. This really helps me on focusing to enable more people around the world to make amazing bread at home. Every homemade bread is a win. Industrial bread is seriously broken. Your donation is going to help me to work more on my mission. Thank you very much.